Welcome to the Performance Formula with Jody Martins. Just want to remind you that this is the second part of a conversation I've had with Russell on champion teaming. Please feel free to listen to the first part. Right, let's head over back to the conversation. Yeah. So my thought about the soft skills is, and I agree with you, that it sort of takes a back seat. And I know we're going to spend a little bit of time talking through some myths around this stuff, right? But I think my biggest problem with it, personally, is the name they gave these skills, whoever came up with them. I think in naming them the soft skills, that's what's part of the problem. Obviously, that's how we refer to them because that's how people out there, general world would refer to them. There's the hard skills of hit the bat with the ball, and then there's the soft skills of what's happening in your mind, as an oversimplification, of course. But to work on your soft skills, to actually turn inwards, look yourself in the mirror, reflect as an individual, right? Or as a team, to sit and be real with each other, is actually not a soft thing to do. It is one of the toughest things there is to do. I think if it had the name of like the tough skills or the harder skills or the real skills or something like that, then maybe it would have grabbed more people to say, hey, come to the side of the fence, there's some real value here. I think in labeling them the soft skills, that's where somebody missed the mark. But that's besides the point. It's just my 2 cents on it. So one of the things that I often get, and it's sort of the first one that I want you to just comment on, is this idea of that a lot of people would think that this stuff's not real. Like the soft skills is not real.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's not visible, it's not tangible, something that they can use their 5 senses with, right? It relegates it. It almost says that it's actually non-existent. It's not something that it's make-believe. It's something that you're pretending, right? It's imaginary. So therefore, it gets shunted aside, and essentially, we lose out the value of it. It's the same thing what you just referred to. If we're labeling it as soft, then people tend to think, oh, no, I can ignore it because soft is not good, right? But because also in this case, it's not visible, visual, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I mean, we mentioned the word sportsmanship. I think it's mentioned in the book. Sportsmanship is a real thing, and you can experience it, but it's not necessarily visual. You have to have almost a third eye to see it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not recognizable. It's just not visual to the 5 senses, but it's still there. It's still real. So that's the first argument that people tend to have because they live their life only on the external plane, and therefore the superficiality of that forces these soft skills to be relegated even further, as in not important, and they miss the value, they undermine it, and therefore undervalue it. Yeah, and that's the first myth.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that completely. That you hear that quite a lot. The next one that would often be mentioned would be that it's fluff, like it's, yeah.
Yeah, again, the fluff suggests that it's only surface, it's only on the top end of it, right? And there's a deeper complexity or the things that are hidden below it. So someone might say, how you get into arguments, someone has a remark and it kind of surprises or offends someone, right? And there are deeper underlining things at play that contributes to that. So you can't just say it's all fluffy and this is just what they like and who they are. You have to look a little bit deeper below the surface because those complexities has a place. It's coming from somewhere. Like any fruit that we experience on the outside has roots. It stems from somewhere. So when you look at the game itself, it's very statistical by nature. We always have a scoreboard, and the scoreboard doesn't lie, so to speak, right? The scoreboard is the reflection of the deeper things that's at play within us. So we can't just look at the numbers and say that means nothing. It just means win or lose, and that's it. There are more deeper things that play underneath it. So similarly, soft skills and the game itself, there are always deeper complexities that are unraveling itself in a sense. And we need to look at it from a player point of view, where there are a lot of fluffy stuff, but are unhealthy coping mechanisms. Like, for instance, I'm not suggesting that it's like this, but we tend to want to quickly get off the field so that we can go have a beer and get the relief away from the pressure from the crowd and whatever. Then there are unhealthy coping mechanisms, and it leads to dangerous decisions down the line because we're not looking at it below the surface.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just playing these through my mind, and I'm sure the people that are listening in here, is doing the same. The next one, and I mean, maybe I put the cart before the horse a little bit. Yeah, is that a lot of people think, oh, well, it's soft, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what you were saying about earlier. I think it's also the further explanation in the book is it's suggesting that when we talk about soft, we talk about incompetence or fragility. We talk about when people are vulnerable, they're actually exposing themselves, right? And the masking, particularly with males, they have to mask their strength in a way, show strength, don't cry, those sorts of things. But vulnerabilities are actually a good thing. They're not soft. They're actually the hardest and the toughest things to have. The inner strength. When you face major trauma in your life and you overcome it, it creates an inner resolve. And that's what we're talking about. Soft skills creates that inner strength, that outward strength does not necessarily have the same capacity to do, right? And oftentimes you crumble inwardly as opposed to outwardly, right? And that's why soft skills are not soft. They're actually the toughest things, as you said earlier, because it's about developing things on the inside of you that oftentimes it's a bruising of an ego. It's failure after failure because you're losing more times than you're succeeding statistically in the game, right? So you need to be able to have an inner resolve to feel like a winner despite the evidence of losing all around you, of failing or losing games, or not scoring runs or not taking wickets and all sorts of things. And that's why these soft skills, if you ignore them, they can come and bite you and it can curtail your career if you don't pay careful attention to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think of my own life a little bit, yeah. More so at times than other things. If I think of the last 3 or 4 years and the stuff I've had to go through, left my job in Joburg where I was earning a fairly good salary, had a business, just left all of that in the name of, like, a lot of this conversation sort of goes through my mind, and it's like, okay, yeah, in the name of desiring a different life, like a completely different life, and then actually taking the steps towards that. And I've had so many people message me and say, "Oh, Jody, wish we could also stay by the coast." I post on social media this beautiful Mossel Bay, mountains in the background, blue water, and things like that, and then people will be all jealous. But I'm not saying this to sort of pat myself on my own back, but maybe I am, right? Because we've got to be able to also say, like, geez, I did this. We literally packed up and came here and started from scratch, lost a lot of stuff in the process, but I think at times it was my ability, with an understanding of the mental side of sport and sort of the things I was trained in. It's that ability that allows me, and a phenomenal wife, to be perfectly honest, a phenomenal wife that I can sort of bounce my ideas to. And if I am vulnerable, right, and if I feel tough, like, I have the freedom there to express and speak my heart and my mind and not be judged for it and things like that. um but what, and maybe my wife is a good example of, then, say, how this next myth sort of comes into being, because I think I use her in a way, to what this myth refers to, is that a lot of us have these intuitive, like, it's an intuitive blind spot, right? And so I think she's like my mirror that I use to reflect a little bit back to me. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we definitely need others around us, particularly your inner circle, your trust, your confidants, and your wife would obviously be the first one. A lot of people also tend to lean towards the spirituality as a sense where you can look yourself in the mirror in that way. But we need those close inner circle friends or blind spots. But we also therefore have our own internal radar, our intuition, right? We have got given the faculty of reason. Animals have instinct, but humans have reason, right? But we can't base our life purely just on reason, on rationale. There's also a further gift on the inside of us, which is our conscience and our intuition. And those things are highlighted or strengthened with other trusted members, as you said now, your wife or other confidants and friends and so forth. And those are the things that also, that's one of the major strong soft skill giftings or talents that each and every one of us got given. But what often happens in life, particularly in this modern day world where everything is externalized, we tend to suppress or numb the nudges, right, of the intuition, of the conscience. And we tend to, again, put it on the back burner and make it as if it's not important. So everyone has a sense of, at times, when you had like this whisper on your shoulder, or a sense that don't go this way, it's dangerous there, or those sorts of things, those warning signs. And we tend to ignore them at our peril again, right? But I think this is one of the drivers of soft skills, is to recognize that it's already inbuilt within us. And it's a gift that's given to us that we need to be grateful for and actually grow it. And once we grow it, then the soft skills world becomes truly a world worth living in, fulfillment, and a revolution of sorts, because it awakens us to things and experiences that, wow, life can be such. We don't have to be blind spotted by things. We can actually have open eyes and embrace it with the sacredness of what it has to offer.
Yeah. So then a lot of people would say, it's a luxury. It's only when you're at a certain level, or it's only when you earn a certain salary, or it's like it's not a necessity. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's very similar to the what I referred to when it comes down to that natural gifting, natural talent. So we, as scouts and stuff like that, when we go out to cricket spaces, we can naturally see, no, this is a natural born talented. There's a future almost scripted out for this individual. But we know a lot of those sort of superstars in the making, right? If you want to call them that, that haven't got the core elements of human connections, or heart to heart, um, call it stabilizing connections between people, right? The core elements of how to get along with others. Because they are these superhuman, these overachievers in terms of talent, they're outliers, right? Then those luxuries tend to cripple the chances of them being able to be relatable, because they're so, they're so gifted, and their giftedness almost separates them from others. So if you do not develop the soft skills element, what it will inevitably do is alienate yourself. Like with any forms of culture that that creates gods out of play. I'm sure that India is probably one example of it with the Sachin. Sachin couldn't probably be relatable to a normal human being because he's godlike with all his capabilities and talents. And I mean, there's many of them, right? But the point is, if you don't have those core elements of resonance with humans, heart to heart connections with others, those soft skill elements tend to be under threat, and you could lose yourself. I'm not saying it happened with Sachin, but there are a lot of others who tend to fall by the wayside because they think their gifting is enough and they don't have to develop the purer sense of relatedness to another. Because all that life inevitably is about the equity of relationships and the meaningfulness of those relationships genuinely with each other. So those are the added luxuries of life, as opposed to just the giftedness. The giftedness is actually to serve others with, to benefit others with, and truly help another. And that's why I'm saying it's not a luxury, it's actually a benefit for others to experience.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you come from that place of giving, right? That's sort of
Yes,
what that refers to.
exactly.
How would soft skills be wasteful?
It will be wasteful when we start looking. So similarly, it actually riffs off this one that we just spoke about, with the luxury of talent. So if you do not engage in soft skills and invest into the soft skills development within yourself and with others, what it then does is it rates the results or the tangible outcomes higher than the relationships that you're trying to grow. Because ultimately, you can accomplish anything in the world, it will feel meaningless or empty, because the relationships is where the energy lies. It is where the satisfaction and the fulfillment lies, right? Your tank is going to be filled there. So when you're not contributing to the soft skills, so soft skills are human skills, the core skills. I think you were looking to reframe the word earlier, not soft, but core, human, fundamental. All these sorts of words can come into play. Harder, tougher, whatever, right? But essentially, it points back to relationships. It points back to how tight are those relationships, how genuine are them. So if you're not doing it from that consciousness, you tend to waste them. You tend to think of them, oh no, this is just a means to an end. I'm just using this. I'm kind of engaging with you. I'm getting to know you, so that I can use my association with you for a progression for myself, right? But if you consciously do it, then you understand that you have benefit to be in a relationship with another purely to give of yourself to another, and vice versa. You're giving someone else an opportunity to give of themselves to you. So it's this constant reciprocation that is not wasted. It's actually enhanced the relationship, and it's safeguarded by the relationship. It's not just for self gain, it's for self serving purposes, for giving of another. And that flow of life is perpetuated.
I have a realization here for myself, as so often happens between our conversations, that I tend to think of the individual, and I forget that we're talking about the team, and so I think this idea of this idea of that the soft skills isn't just related to me as a person, but it's also related to how I relate to others. Like that is part of what this is, right? And then in that way, the name soft skill makes sense, because if we have a softer, inverted commas, approach with the people around us, I think as a generalization, that would be better than coming in hard and edgy and overly strict, just in a very simplistic form. And so I think that's pretty cool to know that it doesn't have to be that way, right? I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this next myth, right? Is the idea of that it's assumed.
Yeah, assumed. It talks about this shift about you need to be intentional about. It's very similar to what you just mentioned there. Now, the softer elements of engaging with each other. So one needs to be cognizant that in order to ask for a hand, right, from another, you first need to touch their heart, right? First connect, and then you can correct whatever forms of behavior with another, right? So the assumption there is that if we are put together in a space, we can't just assume that the soft skills are going to be, you have to work at it, you have to grow in it. You can't just assume because you're married to your wife now, you're going to be loving each other forever. There are going to be conflict moments, and you have to look for that way of touching the heart so that you can require the hand at some point, right? But it needs to be from a genuine space of sincerity where you're truly meaning the heart first, and then the hand is almost like a consequential thing, right? So what it leads into, it's this intentional shift towards let's not just look at myself individually as the survival of the fittest, right? Can I just make it through? It's a matter of all for one. It's like, how do we actually collectively benefit here? How does there mutual benefits? And not just maybe for ourselves as a team, but for the game. How does the game collectively benefit from our contribution? So it's all about how do we touch one another's hearts so that we can play a hand in this collective benefit for us all. And that's how we cannot assume that that's going to happen. We have to be intentional about it to shift from survival of the fittest to all for one. And it's that softer element that needs to be the driver, the spirit for love, and then we can start teaming together for that championship or championing, right?
Yeah. My sense about it is that if I hear those words, it's assumed, then it normally goes to people assume that it takes care of itself. And so it doesn't get the effort it needs.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. So often I would sort of engage with some people and, potential clients or whatever. And then they would refer to mental skills as being gimmicky, you know? It's almost so what's your understanding of that?
So the gimmick concept is very it's a modern day thing in a sense. I would assume it's more heightened modern day effect of it all. The subtlety of soft skills, because it's a unseen, underground, or internalized component. A lot of those things they're looking for means of expression, right? And that means of expression can be questioned because people can question the motives of what you're doing. Where is it stemming from? What is the real motive behind what you're doing? Are you trying to genuinely, are you motivated genuinely by this and you're doing this out of a pure heartedness? Or you're trying to manipulate or coerce me into some form of buy-in or action and so forth? It's like a salesperson. You know that they're trying to get sales over the line. They don't really care whether it's going to benefit you to have this product, if it's going to make a difference to your world and your life, right? So it's almost like that. When the internal stuff bubbles over on the inside and they found expression on the outside, people on the outside tend to question that because they're not sure if it's coming from a pure space. And likewise, if we know that this internal world is important and we see it within someone, right, we spot nuances of it. Now we start fashioning man-made structures to kind of perpetuate or personify these things. Now it becomes gimmickry. Now it becomes like, oh my goodness, you're actually creating a manufactured version of something that's naturally flowing out of you. Now it becomes, it's almost like I don't know, what's this thing called? The Valley of Waves, a make-believe wave structure, in in the middle of the desert there. You know what I mean? So you're making a man-made or an imitation version of something that's already happening naturally. That's going to be outflowing, but we're not trusting the process. So we're actually creating outward expressions of it, and that's when it becomes gimmickry. And then sincerity or the sacredness of that soft skills is therefore stripped. Now people tend to say, yes, soft skills is only gimmicks. It's only marketable, stuff so that you can promote this thing, and it's really wishy-washy. And that's where the gimmicks comes in, and that's a myth because it can be natural, like kind of real, and it can naturally flow out. We just need to have the patience to allow it to manifest itself.
Yeah, I'm reminded of my idea of window dressing that I like to refer to.
That's right. Yeah.
You're putting something out there. We see this often on social media. Some team will post some stuff over there of how together they are, whatever their slogans are, and things like that. But if you go look behind the scenes, and we often get to speak to some of those players, then it's not that at all.
The
And
world
so,
currently is flooded with that. It's flooded with that. That's all we know, to be honest. Hence
yeah.
the necessity for soft skills.
Yes, 100%. So that what you put out there is authentic and real.
Yes.
How is this soft skills sometimes sort of perceived that it's industry irrelevant?
Yeah. So when you go into, in particular, it's universally applicable, number one, by the way. That's why we're saying it's a myth, right? Because it can be cross referenced. Anywhere you go where there's people involved, it's going to be applicable. It's going to be relevant, right? So it's a myth that it's irrelevant. When you go into certain situations when you have to do cutthroat jobs, I thought about recently the Navy SEAL type of thing where you have to be hardened and you have to take people out for the sake of, killing another for the sake of saving others, right? Those sorts of things. You almost have to switch off this instinct to not kill, and you have to do your job, so to speak, right? So therefore, they say it's not relevant to that industry. But those guys tend to come back into real life, if you want to call it, and they struggle forever with the fact that they've taken life from another, and they were compelled to do that. So you can't detach yourself temporarily for a stint and then think that you're going to operate normally. You're going to have to go through a lot of counseling, trauma, because you yourself is human, you a person, and you're just placing someone into a space and asked to do inhumane things. So you can't separate that. It's like I used to say about cricketers. You can't take a kid that's just come out of school, right? In the case of what's this kid's name now, Quena. Parnell was my example of times before, right? You can't take these kids out of school and then put them into the national team as a player because he's got the skill and capabilities because he's done well in the under 19 World Cup. But you forget that this kid is still 19 or 17 or 18. I can't remember what age he is, but he's still a kid. And now all of a sudden, because he's posted into that space, he's now this role model figure where people are fashioning their image of him. I want to be like him. But he has no inner capacity to be that necessarily. He hasn't got enough life experience to be able to be that. So these things are relevant to him now. It's not irrelevant. It's more and more relevant because he's a person and he's also a player, but you need to be able to distinguish that. So anywhere you may go in that you'll say no, soft skills is not applicable. Yeah, that's a myth. That's a lie. It can't be true because people are there. Hence, soft skills need to be there.
Yeah. Right, the last one, and I think most probably the most important. Not that any of these are not important, but when I look through these, this one definitely stands out for me because I think it's the prevailing sort of thing out there. You and I spoke about this very often throughout all our conversations. This idea of work hard, and that soft skills are inferior to hard skills.
I'm going to be slightly different because I normally talk very abstractly, right? And I tend to speak almost like life metaphors as opposed to cricket specific concepts. But I'm going to speak cricket here now. I'm going to just blatantly say what's in the book. Essentially, we ask any cricketer, and we've said this before, but we've asked any cricketer what percentage of the game is mental skills versus the technical, tactical components of the game. What's the split, right? And oftentimes, depending on the format, it goes 70-30, 80-20, 90-10 sometimes. But for the large part, the mental skills will always be higher than the technical, tactical skills, right? But we never pay enough attention to it. We pay the least amount of effort towards those soft skills, those mental skills or emotional skills, whatever it is, right? We don't pay the attention to it. So just within the game, it's already more superior, if you want to call it that, in terms of the rating, that self-assessed rating that players would give. But they tend not to actually follow through on that. So the hard skills play its part, but it's so naturalistic. It's so easy for them to do that, right? That you have all this other time that you have available to address the soft skills, which is going to be able to sustain your success for longevity and to make you actually someone to get along with, someone to actually enjoy the successes with, right? That there, by relegating that and thinking that it's inferior. And I know current coaches tend to think, no, this is just it's just something that's being just being human and who you are. It doesn't matter as much. We just need the player, particularly like we said earlier about the industry irrelevant. We just want the cricketer. We don't worry about the person now. The person's an obnoxious idiot. In actual fact, we're going to use the fact that he's a bit of a I don't know what's the word. He's a bit of a crusty fella, like he's in your face, he's whatever. And we're going to enhance that. We're going to flame that up. Be in your face. This example used of the Australian now. In your face, intimidate, um, you know, clap underneath your breath here, irritate the opposition. Those are all soft skills at play, but they're low level soft skills because you're trying to use a mechanism to over or combat an opposition. But it's very poor. It's low character, and it just seems there's more to offer. So this type of thing here highlights the importance of the more you enhance the soft skills, the better your hard skills are going to be ultimately. And it's summarized in the entire champion teaming ebook from the beginning when I list all 10, where I said soft skills equates to hard results. So you're not going to have the hard results or the hard skills maximized unless you actually focus on the soft skills.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure, Russell, I've loved this conversation. I think it's a good one to start the year with. My sort of overarching thought about this conversation is we can really do more. All of us, me, you, every person listening to the podcast. We can do more in that space. Be more aware, be more conscious, be more open to, be more seeking at times. I know many coaches who know the mental side is important, but they would never engage with somebody in that space. Closed up, my world, my domain. And so yeah, I've loved every bit. I'm a little bit. I think parts of the conversation is sort of turning through my head, as it tends to with me. I'll most probably message you in 2 days' time or something like that, as I always do, or sometimes do, not always. But yeah, thank you for your time. I don't know if you've got any final thoughts on this, or as we wrap up this conversation.
Yeah, I just want to mention though, like we spoke from the book in a sense, right? And the modality that I used and when I wrote it in co-authored the book with Semco Style, which is a modality that allows these soft skills to be, call it carpeted, red carpeted in a way. It's an easy entree into the soft skills, and the fact that soft skills is basically principles, right? It's the principles, and there are 5 principles. Just imagine if this was prevalent and something that was a focus of most sports teams. The champion teaming becomes effortless if you have these 5 skills, 5 principles essentially, right? And they are thus: trust, alternative controls, self-management, extreme stakeholder alignment, and then lastly, creative innovation. If you look at those 5 elements, then you have a team that is flourishing, that is fulfilled, members that are just joyful and enjoying themselves. You're going to have an impact. You're going to have the performance that you're seeking, which is what we're talking about under the performance formula. And you're going to have the sense of happiness, joy that comes through, that resonates through in all areas when you have those 5 at play. And this is the thing that we're trying to highlight by at least starting with the myths as a conversational starter. As you said, a lot of people will listen to this and have to contemplate it, but this is the start of a conversation for champion teaming.
Yeah, awesome. I want to encourage anybody, if they've listened to and if they've been following us along, if this sort of stuff interests you in any way, shape, or form, reach out to Russell. In the show notes below will be all the information around how you can maybe get that ebook, as well as Russell's details to connect with him. Yeah, I'm loving these conversations because I'm learning from them, and hopefully we have some more. Thank you very much for your time, Russell. I'll hopefully see you soon.
Thanks, Jody. It was awesome. Thank you.